And we're live. How's it going, Cam?
It's going fantastic, Phil. Thank you for having me on here.
I appreciate you coming on. So, wanted to get you on here today just to kind of talk about what you're doing and promote some of your books and talk about what you do as far as the self help realm
Yeah.
goes and just get your stuff out there and let people discover you a little bit more.
Okay, great. Well, I'll give a short intro. My name is Kam Knight. I am a coach, international speaker, and author of a dozen books in the area of mental, emotional, and physical performance. And for as far back as I can remember, I've been a fairly driven individual. It's hard not to be living in a culture and society with so much personal development content and everyone telling you to do more, be your best self, and reach for the stars. And as a result, I've always wanted to do more and have more in life. And although I've had my fair share of success, I always felt like I missed the mark or the success was much more difficult and stressful than it needed to be. And I always wondered why that was. Why is it if I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation and desire to do it, but for one reason or another, I can't or don't do it? And at the time, there were no clear answers. The best answers I would hear was you need beliefs or motivation and discipline. And I agree that all those things are part of the equation, but I always felt like there was more to it. And over the last 15 years, that question lingered in my mind. Every time I felt stuck, I wondered why. Why can't I get stuff done? Why do I keep spinning my wheels? Why don't I just do this dang thing so I can get the result that I want? And the more books I read, coaching I did, and seminars I attended, the more I began to realize that, hey, wait a minute, there's a part of our brain designed to hold us back. There's a part of our mind built to keep us from growing and making progress. And I call this part resistance. And it's a brick wall that we hit anytime we want to do something, but we can't no matter how much we want to do it. And so now I talk a lot about this concept of resistance, what it is, why it's there, and how it kind of holds us back.
Okay. Yeah, I've noticed in my life there's been times to where, especially after a long work week, you get
Yeah,
to oh, I got to get chores done or I need to go grocery shopping or whatever. You just don't want to do anything because you're
yeah,
tired or you have other frustrations, you're arguing with somebody or whatever. So you have these little like blocks that keep you from wanting to get or not wanting to get, but keeping from you from achieving the things that you need to do. Yeah, I get that. It makes sense. I can be a huge procrastinator,
yeah.
but I'm 46, so I'm trying to get over that now. Is yeah.
And more or less, you kind of hit it on the head. That is what resistance is. It's this part of us that holds us back, or we have a part that creates wants and desires, and it creates endless wants, one after another. And then we have another part that actually gives the green light to act on that want. And this is really important because we have a part of our brain that creates wants and desires, but then we also have a part of the brain that keeps us from going after those desires. And for a long time, I used to think whoever created life or humanity must have been really sick and twisted because how could they do this? Like, how could they uh, create this dynamic where they give us wants and then prevent us from going after the wants and create all this inner turmoil.
Mhm.
And this part that I call resistance is the reason for our procrastination, our self sabotaging behavior, as well as our inability to do the things that it is we want. Though it goes pretty deep and it's pretty complex. And
Yeah. So what kind of got you into this type of work? Like was there a certain like flashpoint in your life that you know what, I got to change. I need to do better or change my way of thinking or was there like a catalyst point or was it just
yeah, I don't think it was so much a specific point in my life that was a catalyst for it. It was just majority of my life I wanted to do more. And even at times in my life where I didn't, because there's just so much personal development out there and because there's so much inspiration, whether it's in movies and TV shows and talk shows and podcasts. I was constantly being pumped with this motivation and the inspiration to do more and live my best life. And then I wouldn't be able to. And then that would leave me feeling very defeated or like something is wrong with me or that I can't do it. And as I had mentioned, that question kept lingering. It's like, why is it if I want to do something, it's like I want to do it and I know how to do it and I have the motivation to do it, like, why am I not being able to do it? And again, if a person doesn't kind of understand the intricacies of what's going on, it is easy to assume that we're lazy, we don't have what it takes, we don't have that motivation and discipline that people say that we don't. And that can kind of spiral down into even more procrastination and sabotaging behavior.
That makes sense because it's like once you start, going down is a lot easier than coming up,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because you have gravity helping you go down. So it like I was at a point in my I took 2 years off of work because I was having some medical issues, and I was able to take about 22 months of work off. And I noticed in the beginning I was very much active and doing all the chores and getting everything done. But as time progressed, I noticed in myself that I was like just not doing less and less and less. I mean, it was still stuff was still getting done. It was just getting done not as quickly as it could have.
Yeah.
So I think that there's something to the fact that you need to have. I think that we're designed to work, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We
We
have to have
are.
some sort of goal to work towards.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, then like if we don't, we feel like we're meaningless, and we need a routine because we are routine driven creatures. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. And that's a really awesome point, and I want to riff on that because I actually talk about that in my concentration book. And I talk about it as like we humans, we need to be active and engaged. This is the reason why sitting in long bus and train rides is so painful and why people have a hard time in quietness or silence, or why a lot of people actually smoke or drink to relax or chill is because we are built to be engaged and to be moving and to be active. And unfortunately, a lot of times we fall into, let's just say, distractive or destructive engagement, such as maybe watching television, social media, and things like that. But we do need to be engaged, and which is why I say to people, like, if you have the need to be engaged and you need to be moving, why not put that movement on the things that you want to do and accomplish in life? Though, as you mentioned, we do need a direction, we do need a bit of focus. And there's a lot of talk about how important purpose is because once you have clarity in your life, it just starts to become so much easier to move toward that. And, I struggle with that because I have what I call an overactive wanting mechanism, which is where my brain creates wants all of the time. It sees something, it wants it. It hears about something, it wants it. In fact, I don't have to hear or see anything. My brain just creates wants and is pulling me in all sorts of directions. Before I can start on one want, my mind is pulling me to other wants to chase. It's the reason I ended up writing over 12 books. I've traveled to over 100 countries because my wanting mechanism was just like going all over the place. And as cool and fun as it can be at times, it can also hinder progress because I wasn't moving in any one direction. And when a person has too many wants, it actually becomes overwhelming. Like, there's a lot of talk about, as humans, we have unlimited potential, and we do in some respects. But the brain has a lot of limitations, and it's really important to get clarity on what it is we want and cut out the rest because if we don't cut out the rest, then we don't move in any direction. In fact, there's an awesome quote that I really love by David Allen. You can have anything you want, but not everything. And I think a lot of people's procrastination really comes down to they're just chasing too many things. And when they do start on something, their mind sees
Goes
that
into
shiny object, goes in another direction, and then
right.
we get lost.
I wonder how much laziness would factor into procrastination. Like
Yeah,
I know there's some people that just want to keep status quo, and they don't want to. They're just like, oh, I'm just treading water. I'm not
yeah,
progressing. I'm not regressing. I wonder, like, what it would take. I just wonder if there's something in there that is inherently lazy with some people. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
yeah. I completely understand what you're asking. And I would say laziness isn't the cause of procrastination.
Okay.
It's a manifestation of something internal going on. So a great way to understand this is that, as I mentioned, we have a part of our brain that creates wants and another part that allows us to act on that want. It's the part that gives us a green light. And this part actually evaluates the want to see if we have the time, energy, resources, and all of that to be able to do it. And so this part evaluates it using a whole host of criteria. And if the desire is not in line with any of the criteria, it will prevent action. So a great analogy for this would be imagining yourself standing before a panel of judges or board of directors. So every decision or desire you have must go through them. And if even one of the members is against the idea, it will not pass. Now, so what are these criteria that the brain evaluates? Well, some of the more commonly known ones include beliefs, habits, and comfort zones. So our brain will analyze what we're trying to do against these things. And if it's not in line with our beliefs or habits or comfort zone, it will prevent action. But there's even more criteria. Some of them include, does what we're trying to do go against our self image? And if it does go against it, then the brain will prevent us from moving forward or it'll make it very difficult. Other things include authority issues, core needs. Core needs is actually a good one. Would you like me to kind of go more into detail
Sure.
about it?
Please do.
Yeah. So as humans, we have all sorts of needs, such as a need for love, affection, attention, and approval. Now, some of these needs are deeply ingrained into us, like the need for a mother's love or a father's guidance. And these needs are so deeply ingrained when we don't receive it, it's painful. It creates a lot of pain, the kind of pain that can make a person go crazy. That's how deeply rooted these needs are. Now, if growing up, we don't have these needs met, and the brain comes to the conclusion that these needs can't be met, won't be met, or is too difficult to be met, it will prevent us from going after those needs. Makes sense, right? But because these are core needs, they don't go away. They just get louder and stronger and more painful. But because the brain feels that these needs can't be met or won't be met, it feels it has no other choice but to distract us from the pain. And there's many ways it'll distract us, and one of them is making our lives difficult, challenging, and unable to finish anything because if we could finish things, our life would be good. And if our life was good, then we would have this need at the forefront of our awareness. And so it's much easier for the brain to make our lives difficult. So the focus is always on difficulty and not this pain. And a great story to help kind of solidify what I'm trying to say is that I knew someone who wanted nothing more in life than the love of his dad, but his dad never gave it to him. So it was painful. It hurt him a lot. So much so that his brain distracted him from the pain by living a hectic life, living paycheck to paycheck, never being able to make ends meet. Again, why did his brain do that? Because if he could finish things that he started, his life would be good. And if his life was good, this need would be at the forefront of his awareness, and because his brain believed it could never be met, it felt it had no other choice but to distract him from it. So that's how deep some of the reasons for why we procrastinate and laziness come up. And so for him, he didn't get much done. On the surface, you would think he was just a lazy person, but there was this big thing operating in the background that was causing his laziness. So it goes back to what I was saying. Laziness is a manifestation of something of resistance holding us back, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. Yeah. I feel like it's a root causes for just
Yeah.
about everything. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like when you don't have those basic needs, like, you said love and
Perfection.
understanding and affection and all that, it doesn't, I could see where it could make someone go off the path per se, and I think that it's like I told somebody recently at work that because they're about to become a father. I said, you have a huge responsibility when it comes to this to not mess them up when they get
Yeah.
older. You know what I mean? I chose not to be a father because I just didn't want children. I was just nothing that I wanted to do. But but no, I think what you're doing, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. So what got you I don't know if I already asked this or not, and I'm having a brain fart, but
Yeah.
so what what got you into it? I mean, were you something? Was it something that you just felt like you had to do as far as to teach people this thing, or what? You know,
So, I was an author for a while. As I mentioned, I wrote 12 books. And then there came a point where it was time to start marketing myself. In the beginning, I was doing well selling as a self-published author. And then a lot more people started becoming self-published authors, and it was getting harder to see. And I wanted to really put myself out into the world, maybe get on stages, speak about my ideas and things like that. And so I started going to seminars and whatnot, and I kept hearing different ideas of why we're blocked. You know, one seminar, somebody is talking about identity. I did an emotional intelligence program, a year-long program, and this guy is talking about family systems, which was pretty profound. And then you hear about habits, and then some people will talk about comfort zones. And then over time, my brain just started to realize, hey, wait a minute, there's a part of our mind that's designed to hold us back. And I realized that anytime we have a desire, it doesn't just evaluate one thing, it evaluates a whole bunch of stuff. All the things have to be checked off before it allows you to do it. And so when I was feeling stuck and I did work on my identity, I'm like, well, why am I still stuck? Then I come to the fact that it's something else. And I'm like, okay, work on that. Work on the family systems, I work on the authority issues, I work on whatever. And then I started seeing it in other people. And then I felt like I kind of formulated a really good understanding of what it is that's holding us back. And so I put it into an online course, and I got a lot of rave feedback about it. Like everyone who's gone through it is like, this is some of the best content I've come across, very different from what I'm hearing, especially some of the big names such as Tony Robbins and all that. And I think the reason people really resonate with it is because the industry is focusing on only one side of the equation. They're focusing on the part that creates wants. And so they're pumping us with all this motivation and inspiration and all that. But what happens is once that person receives that motivation, inspiration, and they leave the seminar or after they finish the book or the coaching, those feelings fade and they're right back to where they started. Is because they didn't handle the resistance piece of why they can't move forward. And so this concept of internal resistance in my course talks about the resistance piece. And if you notice, especially in my books and whatever, I'm not a very emotionally driven person. Like I don't pump people with motivation, and I stay very grounded because I know if you go overboard on one side, you're just going to leave the person burnt out because they're going to get all this motivation. They're going to have all this like vision of what's going to be like when they change, and then resistance keeps them from changing, and then they burn out or they feel like, why can't I move forward? And then they have those thoughts of like, maybe it's because I'm lazy and things like that. We have to handle both. I think both are important, but no one's really talking about the resistance piece. In fact, the concept doesn't really even exist, because if you study psychology, you'll find there's a lot of disagreements in psychology. People are very adamant, like, no, it's not that, it's this, and it's not this, it's that. And with this model, it's all of it. Like the brain checks through everything, and if even one of the items is off, like I said, if even one of the board members rejects the idea, it won't pass. So we need to work on all the layers.
yeah, I think that approach is I think a lot better than just one thing. Is not, it's like usually when you have a problem, right? There's more than one facet to that problem.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so it makes more sense to have a checklist or like a blueprint of what's going on
Yeah.
to maybe fix the problem. Now
Yeah.
let me ask you this: how, like, with the back to the procrastination thing a little bit, do you think that some of that could be related to ADHD, or do you think that it's is more of just, like you said, the brain holding us back?
Yeah. So if we look at this model, we have a part of our brain that creates wants, and then we have another part that allows us to act on that want. And I may not have been clear, but actually both parts can get in the way. The parts that create the wants can get in the way, and the parts that hold us back get in the way.
That makes sense.
And the part that creates the wants get in the way because our own wants can be a hindrance to achieving them. And one of the explanations I gave is if you have an overactive wanting mechanism where your brain is creating all sorts of desires, well, that becomes a hindrance because as soon as you start one thing, your brain creates a desire for another one. And then when you start that, your brain creates a desire for another one, and then you can't move in any direction. And in many ways, is a response that is what a lot of people who have ADHD are going through.
Right. Similar to, yeah.
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 But then there's other wants too. So there's another challenge of wants, which I call the strong want. And the strong want's really fascinating. It's where someone wants something really, really bad. And it's often referred to as having a burning desire. Many coaches and experts talk about having a burning desire and the importance of one, though I would disagree because when our wants grow, so does our resistance. And a great analogy for this is Einstein's theory of relativity. So, one of Einstein's theories, the theory of special relativity, says that space and time are not separate. The three dimensions of space, north, south, east, west, up and down, as well as time, they're one and the same. It's the same fabric. In fact, scientists and physicists don't refer to space and time separately, but call it space time. And in many ways, our wants and resistance is actually the same. It's the same fabric. So when our wants grow, so does our resistance. And our resistance growing makes our want grow even more. And that in turn makes our resistance grow even further. And very quickly, this becomes this feedback loop where now we want this thing really bad and can't have it really bad. And I know everyone listening here has experienced moments where when they wanted something really bad, things weren't moving for them, but as soon as they let it go, things began to fall into place. And so this is another way our wants become a hindrance because when we want something really bad, it actually creates an equal amount of resistance that makes it harder to go after it. So what I tell people is that it helps to reduce your want because if you can reduce the want, you can reduce the resistance. And if you can reduce the resistance, it makes it easier to go after that thing. And so these are just two aspects of our wanting mechanisms that create challenges, the overactive want or the shiny object syndrome and the strong want. But there's other things that our wants get in the way. And so this is a long drawn out answer, but to circle back to the ADHD, in many ways, someone who has an ADHD type of mind, it's more their wants are all over the place.
I think when you have or I think when you have an overload of stimulus like we get with these
Yes.
things, the phones and such, it doesn't it doesn't help because you're constantly being stimulated. You have no That's why they say you're supposed to shut your phone off or get off your phone 2 hours before bed
Yeah.
so you can get rid of the blue light and you can actually get sleep. But I'm
Yeah.
just as guilty as anybody else. I'll sit there and scroll stupid stuff till I'm falling asleep.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also another thing that doesn't particularly help. But
Yeah. I mean, if you look at my phone, I've already set the settings for the blue light to be off.
mhm,
I have the color off, so it's grayscale,
mhm.
and that is so I reduce as much stimuli as possible. And I just want to riff on what you said because this is really important. I had mentioned I had an overactive wanting mechanism, and it's the reason I've traveled to 100 countries, written a dozen books, and I've done all sorts of activities like skydiving, scuba diving, rock climbing, snowboarding, yoga, and so much more. And that was because my wanting mechanism was constantly being stimulated by all the different things to do. Like I said, if I saw, like a new car, I wanted it. The latest gadget came out, I wanted it. Most anything I saw on television, I wanted it. And I realized if I wanted to accomplish anything in life, I had to get a handle on this overactive mechanism. And the way I did it was I cut out as much stimuli as possible: television, YouTube, social media, internet, even personal development I cut out because just reading personal development would trigger inspiration, making me want to do all these things. And I went as far as to even cut out people because seeing people doing and having things triggered jealousy and made me want to do and have those things. Even though I was working on something I was already enjoying, but like I could see someone with something else completely opposite and it would trigger jealousy. And I more or less created a bubble that contained as much stimuli as possible. And that's what really got me a lot more focus. And I know this is very extreme, but I personally believe someone with an overactive wanting mechanism this may not this is not only the best solution, but likely the only solution. And that's because our wants, they're very unruly. Once they get triggered, it's difficult to release them. And it's difficult to focus on anything else once that want's in our brain.
And I think we also another point about wants is the availability of things that you can get almost instantaneously today. You know, like
Yeah,
your Amazons and everything get delivered to you and
yeah,
all that. I don't really think that's an. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a luxury that we have
yeah,
in this country and a lot of countries, to be honest. But it's also I think that there's so much in place. Like I just watched it was a tech expo that happened this year. It was on YouTube. I watched this morning, and the types of gadgets that are coming out is the stuff reminded me of Wally, the movie.
yeah,
You know, where you're just sitting there and you're not moving, you're not doing any of that.
exactly.
And I think that that's you know it's a dangerous slope to be on, and what you're doing I think makes a lot of sense because you're cutting out all the crap. Pardon my
Yeah,
French, you know, and it's just it's getting back to basics and kind of resetting your brain as a human, and I kind of dig
yeah.
it, you know.
Yeah, no, no, 100%. Because now, in the past, our challenge was not enough opportunities or not enough access. And now our challenge is too many opportunities. Like there's so many opportunities we have to do so many different things, so many options. Our options have options, and we have access to too much. And so the skill that we need to be developing in this day and age is the ability to cut things out, to remove anything that's not essential to what we're trying to do and achieve. And it's not easy because it's everywhere. I like, when I had mentioned what I had cut out, I want to harp on, I actually cut out people because if there's people are doing all sorts of stuff. So even if I wanted to cut out social media and all of that, I would hang out with friends and they were doing it. And it was easy to get sucked in by what they were doing. And so I really had to put some barriers and try to limit as many options as possible so my mind wasn't going all sorts of directions. And it wasn't easy, and it's not going to be easy for a lot of people. But I truly believe in this day and age, the real skill is having the ability to cut things out and create walls on things that are trying to get our attention.
Yeah, and I think it's also good to eliminate people in your life that don't support you and don't want to see you grow. Also, I think there's nothing wrong with telling people to take a hike. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Absolutely not. There was a book that it was Arnold Schwarzenegger's encyclopedia that he did years ago about bodybuilding, and he actually said that if there's he talks about if you go out with your friends and they're not eating the proper foods to help you achieve your goals, you need to probably remove them from your life
yeah,
because they will influence you. Like I've had it before. Like, you know, I was diagnosed pre-diabetic and some people are like, I'd go out to eat with them and I would say, hey, listen, I can't really eat this kind of stuff. I'll try to, you know, like, oh, just here, have a piece of pizza. And it was like, they're just jamming it, you know? So yeah, it's 100% when you know, you are, sometimes you are who you hang out with,
yeah,
unfortunately. And yes, I see nothing wrong with removing people from your life that don't, uh, you know, help you
yeah,
achieve your goals. But
yeah.
so with all this stuff that you got, so without social media and without television, what do you do for hobbies? What do you do to like decompress?
I do rock climbing, so
Wow.
something I
Okay.
really enjoy.
Yeah.
I do social dancing, so
Okay.
I do salsa and bachata. It
Nice.
gives me the social activity I need without being in environments that could be toxic. So I can go out and dance in a dance studio versus a bar where there's drinking and TVs and all of that. I really enjoy rock climbing. And so instead of working on lifting weights, that's like my physical activity. I do yoga and more or less I do writing. And this is a really good question because even with my activities, I've narrowed it down to five. So there is this famous story of Warren Buffett hanging out, talking to his pilot. I think Warren Buffett's pilot was like a very successful airman. And one day the Warren Buffett was asking the pilot, "Hey, how are things going?" And the pilot was saying things like, "Oh, not so well. I'm not really moving forward in the things I want in life." And so Warren Buffett says, "Okay, I want you to create a list of the 25 things that you want to do and accomplish and whatever right now or in life." And so he writes it down. And then Warren Buffett says, I want you to rank it from 1 to 25, 1 being the most important and 25 being the least. So the pilot does it. And then Warren Buffett says, I want you to take the top 5 and cut out the rest. Don't think about, don't worry about, and don't do it until the first 5 is done first. And this was a game changer for me because I wanted to do a lot of stuff and there were so many options to do things, but I wasn't moving in any one direction. So I literally just like picked 5 things for my life that I wanted to engage in and cut out the rest. I don't even think about it. If friends want to do it, you guys can go do it. I got my top 5. If you want to do this, you're more than welcome to me.
Mhm.
And for me, I had initially started off with writing, photography, traveling, yoga, and something I think it might have been DJing or music. Picked those, the rest didn't bother with. And when I did that, I had so much more time than I could that I knew what to do with. And that time could be focused on that thing. Now it's different. Now I got the rock climbing, I got the social dancing. I still do the writing, not necessarily in books, but I'm always generating content. And I can make a lot of progress without feeling overwhelmed and things like that because I don't have all these other things weighing me down and pulling me in all sorts of directions. So this is another way I do contain or control the wanting mechanism is just picking a few activities. And it's kind of interesting when I tell people how many things I've cut out. They're just like, well, what do you do for fun? As if you need media and movies and all that to have fun. In fact, I haven't watched a movie in the theaters since 2015.
Wow. Okay.
I
Yeah.
haven't watched a television show since 2011. And I have watched a few movies here and there, and it was just because I was around people who were big movie watchers and I got pressured into it. And then after I did it, I'm like, all right, you
Like,
guys are out of my life.
yeah. Well, then you kind of feel like you wasted 2 hours of your life. You could have been doing something that you actually enjoy. I like the fact that you pick things that are people focused. Like if you're
Yeah.
rock climbing, so I'm assuming you're doing indoor rock climbing at the moment.
Yeah.
But if you're, even if you're not doing indoor rock climbing, you still have to focus on that tremendously.
Yes.
Or, and the dancing, so everything that you pick as a hobby, you have to be physically and mentally involved in it. There's no room for being scatterbrained. When
No.
I ride my motorcycle, I can't think about anything else other than the traffic around me.
Yeah.
So it makes sense,
Yeah.
and it sounds like it's a good way to cut out excess nonsense in your life.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge because prior to that, the brain was like overloaded, like all the different things I could be doing and all the different options that there were. And a lot of it was nonsense, but I was drawn to it because people were doing it and people I knew that were doing it. And as much as, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's still fun. Like jumping from one thing to another is enjoyable. And for some people, that's how they get their joy. And that's great. But that's not for me. I like to go deeper, I like to have depth, I like to get better at things. One of the things I really do enjoy is improving my skill at things. And one of the few ways to do that is to do it a lot. And the way to do that is to cut out the other stuff so you can focus on these few things that you do. And I also I am intentional about the things I choose and supporting my mental, emotional, and physical health. I like the dancing, not just for the social connection, but it's a form of like an aerobic workout. The mountain climbing, same thing. I do indoor climbing and there's a lot of people. You get to talk to people, talk about how you climb that route and this and that. But plus, there's a physical aspect to it that helps me get the physical activity that the body needs. So I am aware of it. I could easily have picked television or movies as one of mine. And that's just,
It's just not for you. No, I
yeah.
I used to be a huge movie buff.
Yeah,
I still have DVDs for God's sakes. I mean, I have a huge
yeah,
collection, and it's just something that I get into because I get into the cinematic aspects of it,
yeah,
and I really enjoy breaking it down and thinking about the layers of subtext and all that. So for me, that's something that I enjoy. So it's one of the things that I do.
yeah,
So I have there's a plethora of things that I do, but I'm not a huge go out into the world anymore. Like
yeah,
I just don't congregate around people that much. I have my core group of friends and things like that, but I don't really. I mean, obviously, I have to go to work and be around people, but that's just that's work.
yeah,
It's it what you're doing is a more stripped down and like a basic. It's almost like a back to basics way of doing things.
That
With all everything else that's going on, if you watch too much news or watch too much television, it can actually affect your mood. It could get you all grumpy. That's why I don't listen to or read the news too much. So you were saying that you traveled. Where all have you been? I noticed on your website you've been to quite a couple cool places. I know one of them was like Vietnam.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I've traveled to over 100 countries in
Uh-huh.
my journey, and
Yeah.
that was because at one point, my vibe was travel.
Uh-huh.
And you would think, "Wow, how did somebody travel so much?" But when you cut out everything else, you have the time and money
Uh-huh.
to do that one thing, and I was
Correct.
able to do that. Yeah, so I've been all over. I think, I've been to pretty much every country in North America, Central America, South America, and Europe, a quarter of Africa, parts of Asia, not too much, and then most of Australasia. Australasia is not just Australia, but Australia, New Zealand, and a couple of the Asian islands like Indonesia and that. I really enjoyed Vietnam. I went at a time when it was still opening up to tourism. And what I love about getting to a country which is just starting to open up to tourism is that you get to experience humans without the influence of the Western culture, media, and things like that. And, I was able to do that in Colombia, some other countries, and the pure, like experiencing human in its more pure form, it's just a blissful joy.
Uh-huh.
Because they have that focus, their mind's not going all over the place, they're not cycling through all these emotions, they're just like calm, centered people who are happy with almost nothing. And yeah, that's just, yeah. And that's actually, interestingly enough, as I'm talking, I'm realizing a lot of my understanding of going back to the basics actually came from my interactions with cultures, countries, and even indigenous that weren't influenced by the outside. I'm like, oh my gosh, like you can actually be happy with less. And it was seeing them that really got the wheels turning for me to start applying it in my life.
Yeah, I think that there's a lost art into that when you see people that are basically, lack of a better term, tribal, and they have to depend on one another, and they don't have those distractions, so that they have to think about food, water, shelter, and that kind of thing, and then it's community and child rearing and all that. So it's all, and if they don't have the distractions, I think that's there's some, like you said, there's a level of beauty in that. And then when you go to a country like you said that is only just opening up to tourism,
Yeah.
you can see how uninfluenced they are
Yeah.
by, like you said, by Western culture, by the rush of greed and all that.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. So I was looking behind you and I see the book up there. It says speed reading.
That's one of my books. And
Right.
then
So
these are a couple of my other ones.
yeah, so I wanted to ask you this, and because I just had the thought, what now when it comes to speed reading, what is it? Is it to get information fast, or is it to just I don't I'm not I've heard of speed reading, but I'm not
Yeah.
exactly familiar. Like, what's the purpose of it?
Yeah, that's actually a fantastic question because a lot of times when people hear speed reading, they immediately assume it means skipping, scanning, and reading less words in less time to try to get more information. But that's not how I see it. I see speed reading as reading more words faster and getting a lot more out of it. Interestingly enough, there are some simple techniques that people can apply that only require a simple shift in habit or how you look at the words, not extensive training, just shifting how you look at words that allows you to take in a lot more words and understand them much quicker. And so you can read more words at a faster rate and understand more. Now, I'm afraid you're going to ask me what those tips are, and it's kind of hard to describe verbally. But if I have it visually laid out in the book, and I'll have the people go through just a really quick exercise. Takes a few seconds,
Mhm.
and their speed is dramatically
Improved.
improved. Yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, because I was afraid. Like I had the thought that if you're speed reading, are you really gathering the information to retain it, or is it
yeah,
just to kind of like slog through it and get it done?
yeah,
I could see if you're reading like War and Peace,
yeah,
you want to go through it. But if it's, yeah, that's cool. So
yeah,
Well, I mean, tell the people where they can find you.
Sure. So they can find me at kamknight.com. That's KAMKNIGHT.com. And I have a free gift for all the people listening. It's my guide, 5 Ways to End Procrastination and Sabotage, which goes kind of really deep into the psychology of how our procrastination and sabotage manifest. So, we talked about how we have a part of the brain that creates wants, and then a part that creates resistance that keeps us from going after that want. Well, when our brain stops us, it doesn't tell us that it's stopping us. It doesn't say, "Hey, Phil, you know that thing that you're trying to do? Well, doing it will expose this need of our love for our dad. And since we can't get it, I'm going to not let you do this thing so we can keep ourselves distracted."
Hmm.
That's not how the brain works. The brain has a lot of tricks up its sleeve. And these tricks are extremely manipulative, and which is why we so fall for them. So this guy talks about some of the more manipulative tricks our brain uses to keep us procrastinating and sabotaging. And they can get that by texting the word flow, FLOW, to 26786. So if they pull out their phone, write a text to 26786, the word flow, they'll get that guide and they get a lot more information from me
Awesome.
from there.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's
Yeah.
really cool stuff. I like what you're doing, and I wish you all the success. And I think what you're doing is going to be it's going to be big soon. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Phil. I liked all the questions. It really helped me get out the material in a way that people can understand. So thanks
Good.
very much.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, you can find me on YouTube, Spotify, Rumble. I have an Instagram and an X account now, and so yeah. But thanks everybody. Talk to y'all later.